They counted you out, but they didn't realize you were just getting still. Not broken, not finished, just still. Sometimes life quiets you down, not to defeat you, but to prepare you. What looks like a setback is often a sacred pause, a clearing of the noise, so your true self can emerge. Neville Goddard didn't just speak of success. He revealed the silent, powerful method of personal resurrection. He didn't teach you to fight your way out, he taught you to assume your way out. This video will show you how. If you've ever faced a point in life where everything seemed to fall apart, if you've been misunderstood, overlooked, underestimated, then what you're about to discover can change everything. This isn't theory. This is a blueprint, a psychological path, a real mental formula that Neville Goddard not only taught but lived. Because Neville knew something most people ignore. Your comeback doesn't begin in the world, it begins in the mind. When everything looks like it's collapsing, most people react. They explain, they chase, they beg for help or attention. But Neville showed us something radically different, that your true power begins the moment you go within and assume a new reality, silently, without announcement, without apology. In the moments when life strips you bare, that's when the work truly begins, not in outer action, not in proving yourself to others, but in rebuilding your inner world with unwavering clarity. Neville said, "Dare to believe in the reality of your assumption, and watch the world play its part relative to its fulfillment." That single sentence holds more power than 1,000 plans or strategies, because the world doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you believe you already are. That's what this video is about. You'll learn why your lowest point can become your most powerful pivot, if you know how to use it. You'll understand why silence isn't weakness, but preparation. Why walking alone isn't isolation, but refinement. And most importantly, you'll discover the inner principles that turn pain into power and confusion into clarity. Neville never told you to ask for permission. He told you to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and persist in it, even if the entire world contradicts it. This is the mindset of a comeback. Not forcing the world to change, but becoming so internally aligned with your new self that the world can't help but rearrange around you. As we go deeper into this video, you'll uncover 7 key principles drawn directly from Neville's most transformative ideas. These aren't just quotes to admire. These are instructions. If applied, they don't just shift your mood, they shift your identity. And once your identity shifts, your reality has no choice but to follow. The reason most people never make their comeback isn't because they lack ability. It's because they never changed who they believed they were. They clung to the story of the fall, rather than stepping into the vision of their rise. But you're different. You're here now, and that tells me something powerful about you. You're ready. So don't just watch this video passively. Feel it. Let the words sink in and challenge your assumptions. Let them peel back the layers of self-doubt you've collected. Because under all the disappointment and noise, your true self, the one Goddard spoke of, is waiting. It's time to awaken that version of you. The one who doesn't react, but assumes. The one who doesn't explain, but embodies. The one who doesn't chase, but magnetizes. Every great comeback starts quietly, in stillness, in a room where no one's watching and nothing looks certain, except the truth you hold inside. That's what Neville was trying to tell us all along. It was never about the conditions. It was always about your consciousness. So stay with this video till the end. Don't skip ahead. Every second matters. Every idea builds upon the last. This isn't entertainment, it's instruction. And if you allow yourself to truly grasp it, this could be the moment your new story begins. Welcome to Ignis Mindset. This is where deep inner mastery meets unshakable transformation. If you're ready to rise, not loudly but powerfully, hit the subscribe button and join this journey, because this is just the beginning and your comeback story is already unfolding. Before we talk about the visible rise, the applause or the recognition, We must speak of the moment when everything goes quiet. The comeback doesn't begin when you win. It begins when you withdraw, when you stop explaining, stop proving, stop chasing, when the world gets silent around you. That is the sacred beginning. Neville Goddard understood this deeply. He knew that what looks like a fall from the outside is often an internal reordering, a spiritual alignment. And you cannot align while being tangled in noise. The world teaches us that power comes through force, through being loud, being active, being seen. But Neville flipped that entirely. He taught that true power begins in assumption. Quiet, steady, unwavering assumption. He wrote, "Change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. No effort, no noise, no argument, just internal truth held without contradiction." When you're coming back from something, a loss, a heartbreak, a failure, your first task isn't to go out and fix the world. Your first task is to fix your inner story. That story you've been repeating about who you are, what you've lost, what's broken. That story must die. And not in public, in private. This is why silence is not weakness. It is a recalibration. Neville taught that your reality mirrors the identity you assume, not the words you say, not the effort you exert, the identity. So in the silence, you don't explain, you don't beg anyone to understand, you become withdraw to rebuild, withdraw to listen, withdraw to feel. In the stillness, something extraordinary happens. Your inner world begins to reorient itself. You begin to feel the edges of a new self taking shape. Not the self who was defeated, but the self who knows they've already risen. This is the power of assumption. Neville never gave importance to external validation. He knew that no one could give you permission to rise, because no one placed you in the fall. You're not stuck because of others. You're stuck because of a belief, a mental loop, a concept of self. And the only way out is to change that concept. The comeback is not a physical event. It is an identity shift. Dare to assume you are what you want to be, Neville urged. Not hope to be, not work toward being. Assume it. That word assume is everything, because it requires you to stop waiting for evidence. It demands that you act from the unseen, that you take your place in a reality that hasn't been confirmed by your senses yet. Neville's work was always rooted in the idea that imagination creates reality. So when you assume your comeback, you don't do it after the fact. You do it first. You claim the mindset, the posture, the emotional tone of the person who has already overcome. You're not trying to escape the past. You're stepping into the future. In your imagination, you stand tall. You feel the calm confidence of victory. You breathe like someone who made it through. You walk like someone who no longer doubts. And most importantly, you stop speaking about what went wrong. You become unavailable for the old story. People around you may still talk about the fall. They may still see the version of you that stumbled. But that is no longer your concern. Neville said, persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and it will harden into fact. So your only job is persistence, quiet persistence, assumed identity, emotional alignment. This is why explaining your journey becomes dangerous. Every time you explain, you lower your energy to the level of disbelief. You try to make others understand something that only needs to be felt within. And in doing so, you weaken the stillness. You disrupt the becoming. Neville didn't teach resistance. He didn't teach confrontation. He taught inner focus so pure that the outer world had to change. Imagine a sculptor, not one who chips away at marble, but one who molds reality itself through thought, emotion, and belief. That's who you are now, and the material you shape is your self-concept. If you want to come back, you must first stop seeing yourself as someone who needs one. You must begin to see yourself as the person who has already returned, better, wiser, stronger, more focused. Feel it in the quiet hours of the morning. Practice it in the solitude of your nights. Let your thoughts echo with the conviction of your new identity. This isn't wishful thinking. It's strategic becoming. When you assume something new, you don't just think differently, you behave differently. Your reactions change. Your priorities shift. You no longer respond to triggers the same way because they no longer match who you are. This is why Neville's teachings are so radical. They remove the excuse of waiting. They place the power back in your hands. The world says heal and then rise. Neville says assume you've risen and you will be healed. This is the law of assumption, a law not of effort but of identity. So the real comeback, it begins not with announcements, not with hustle, but in a moment of deep stillness where you dare to close your eyes and believe something new. In that sacred silence, you stop being the person who was hurt. You stop being the one who failed. You stop telling the story of what happened, and you begin the story of who you are now. This is not fantasy. It's psychological law. The subconscious doesn't care about the past. It only accepts what you persist in imagining now. And what you assume to be true with emotion and repetition, it will reflect back through the world you call real. So step back from the noise, detach from needing others to see. Withdraw not to disappear, but to redefine. You don't need to explain where you went. You don't need to warn anyone about who you're becoming. Just assume the new version of yourself with quiet authority, with reverence for the process. And the comeback will take care of itself. Most people live in constant rehearsal, not for success, but for failure. In their minds, they replay what went wrong, what might go wrong again, and how others may never understand or forgive them for falling. This internal narrative becomes the foundation of their reality. Neville Goddard made it clear, your inner conversation is not just private talk, it is creative command. He wrote, as within, so without. The world you see is not a random event. It is the external echo of your most dominant inner speech. The words you repeat to yourself in silence, in anxiety, in daydreams, those words form the mold of your life. When you want to make your biggest comeback, you cannot afford to be casual with your inner dialogue. You must rewrite it deliberately. You must replace the voice of fear with the language of faith, even if there's no outer proof, especially when there's no outer proof. This is not pretending. It is alignment. When your inner conversation still speaks from your old identity, the one who lost, the one who was broken, the one who doubts, the subconscious will faithfully reflect that story in your outer life. And so Neville's guidance becomes essential here. Speak only what supports your new identity. That means you stop entertaining thoughts like, what if it doesn't work? Or, I've tried before and failed. Those statements are not harmless. They're instructions. They plant the seed of delay, of contradiction, of powerlessness. Instead, you train your mind to say, it is already done. I am already living in the solution. My comeback is inevitable because I have assumed it to be. You begin talking to yourself the way someone would speak after the transformation, not during the struggle. You ask yourself, if I already succeeded, what would I think about this moment? And then you think that thought again and again. Neville knew that repetition of inner certainty is what changes outer experience, not desperation, not analysis, not even effort, just the persistent rewriting of who you believe you are. And this inner reprogramming reaches its most powerful form at night, in that drowsy, soft state between wakefulness and sleep. Neville called this the state akin to sleep, or sets. Every night, as the mind begins to lose its grip on the outside world, you have access to the subconscious in its most receptive condition. This is not the time to mentally review your worries. It is the most sacred opportunity to implant a new reality. In sets, you gently slip into a short, vivid scene, one that implies your comeback has already happened. It's not a wishful movie where things magically fix themselves. It's a calm, believable moment that captures the feeling of, it is finished. Maybe you see yourself walking into a space with quiet confidence, knowing your journey has shifted. Maybe you imagine someone shaking your hand, telling you you did it. Or maybe you just feel the relief in your body, the breath of someone who no longer doubts. Neville stressed that this scene must be short, repeatable, and emotionally charged. You don't need 10 steps. You need one moment of finality, looped until your body accepts it as fact. What matters most in sets is the feeling, the emotional tone of conviction, of gratitude, of calm certainty. Your subconscious listens to emotion, not logic. If you feel defeated while trying to imagine victory, you're not planting the seed yet. You must persist until the imagined victory feels real. Sat is not about trying hard, it's about relaxing into belief. And over time, something shifts. You find yourself making different choices during the day. You respond with more composure. You stop needing to explain yourself to others. You stop reacting to temporary appearances. Why? Because your subconscious has begun to operate from a new assumption. The assumption that the comeback already occurred and that your current experience is simply catching up to it. Neville said, your assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. That is the miracle hidden in silence, in visualization, in repetition. You don't have to convince the world. You only need to convince your subconscious. And your subconscious doesn't care if the outer world agrees. It only reflects your most deeply held feeling of identity. So throughout the day, you become conscious of your thoughts. You guard your mental diet. If a thought arises that contradicts your comeback, you replace it immediately, not with force, but with firmness. You say, that is no longer my story. I choose what I become, and I have chosen something higher. This daily practice of rewriting the inner conversation and saturating the subconscious through sats is not glamorous. It is quiet work, hidden work. But it is the work that creates all outcomes. You stop needing signs. You stop checking how close you are to the result. Instead, you start living as if the result is now behind you. And when that inner shift becomes stable, the outer world must reflect it. People will wonder how it happened. They will ask, when did things start turning around for you? And you'll smile, knowing the truth. It started the moment you stopped rehearsing failure and started embodying certainty. It started the night you chose to imagine something different, not as a wish, but as a decision. It started when you finally took your attention off what was and gave your full devotion to what must now be. The moment you decide to rise is the moment the old story begins to fall away, but it doesn't always go quietly. The past will try to explain itself, to keep you entangled in reasons, explanations, justifications. But Neville Goddard made it clear. The old story only has power if you continue to feed it with attention. You don't owe your past a speech. You don't need to reconcile it with your future. The more energy you spend explaining what happened, why it hurt, how long it's been, the more you stay attached to an identity you are no longer choosing. Neville taught, persist in the assumption, even if the world contradicts it. And this includes your own memory. The comeback doesn't happen because you make peace with the past. It happens because you abandon it, not with bitterness, but with detachment. You look at the former version of yourself and say, that was a necessary chapter, but I no longer identify with it. Then you close the book and walk forward. And walking forward at first often means walking alone. The world is slow to catch up. People may still see the old you. They might remind you of what went wrong, what didn't work, what you once said. But your job is not to defend yourself. Your job is to protect the seed. The seed of your new self-concept needs silence to grow. It cannot withstand the constant tug of reassurance seeking. If you're always asking, do you see my progress yet? Do you believe me now? You're still living in the old vibration. Silence is not punishment. Silence is protection. Neville understood this well. When you begin to assume a new reality, you are vulnerable to outer influence. So you retreat. You spend time alone, not in loneliness, but in sacred stillness. You hold the new image of yourself like a secret flame. You water it with belief. You let it grow, even when no one else notices. This period feels invisible, and it can be hard, but it is essential. The world sees results, but the law responds to assumption. So even when nothing outside has shifted, even when your outer world looks unchanged, you continue to act, feel, and think as the new version of yourself, not because it's proven, but because it's chosen. This is where real persistence begins. Most people persist as long as they see signs, but the one who masters Neville's teachings learns to persist without proof, because they know that reality is always trailing the assumption. The outer world is a mirror, not a leader. It reflects back to you the internal identity you hold most consistently. If you change your self-concept and then stare at the mirror, waiting for it to change, you're still reacting, still doubting, still checking. But if you change your self-concept and walk away from the mirror, trusting that it must reflect the new you in time, that's alignment. Neville said, your assumptions, when persisted in, will harden into fact. Not might, not sometimes, will. But the timeline is not yours to control. What you can control is the persistence. You persist by choosing the new story every day. You persist by refusing to speak the language of limitation. You persist by keeping your inner conversations faithful to your vision, not your history. And even when doubt whispers it's taking too long, you respond, it is already done. Not because the evidence is here, but because the assumption has been made. That is the comeback mindset. It's not about dramatic affirmations. It's about quiet conviction. It's not about making others believe in you. It's about refusing to disbelieve in yourself. Eventually, the world will shift. It will bend to match the new you. People will respond differently. Opportunities will emerge. Circumstances will align. But by then, you won't be waiting for it because you will have already become it. This is why detachment is power. You don't try to manipulate how things unfold. You stop obsessing over the timing. You no longer need the world to validate what you know in your spirit. You rest in the knowing, and that knowing becomes your foundation. You walk each day, not as someone waiting to rise, but as someone who already has. The outer world will eventually tell your story. But by then you will have lived it in your mind 1,000 times. And that's what makes it inevitable. Because in the end, the world cannot resist the pull of a consistent assumption. It must bend. It must rearrange. It must become what you have repeatedly claimed in silence. This is the quiet strength behind every great comeback. Not rage, not revenge, not attention. Just pure, unshakable belief. Chosen in the dark, repeated in the silence, embodied until undeniable. This is your turning point, not out there in the world, but right here in the mind. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You just need to decide that the version of you who rises is the only version that exists from this moment forward. Neville Goddard's wisdom wasn't about waiting for the right time. It was about choosing a new self-concept now and persisting until the world bends to match it. So if you feel the shift beginning inside you, claim it. Comment below, I am making my comeback. Let it be more than a sentence. Let it be your new identity. And if this message sparked something within you, like this video, subscribe to Ignis Mindset, where we go beyond surface motivation and dive into the deep, transformative teachings of Neville Goddard. We are here to guide your growth, protect your vision, and remind you that it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. Because the fall didn't break you, it prepared you. Now rise, as if it was always meant to be this way.